go outside to the cafe, grab some coffee, go to the bathroom, go to the bookshop, but be here at 10 because we will start at 10 a.m. sharp.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Some more people are coming inside, but this is some of the best turnouts for you and for MUN workshops, so I'm so happy that you're all here and we're going to start soon.
Oh,
Do you have a charger for your computer? Not here. I have my charger, like my plug-in, like my adapter is too big to fit in. Same problem. Yeah.
so we get it. You alright? Dear friends, long day. Today is the first day. We having Gilencio. Hello, bro. Ezali jour moko munene lelo lisusu na kati ya New York. Toza na kati nayaki mpona conférence oyo ezali premier jour et tokosala 7 jours tozobanda kala te donc tobanda na 9h non koma na 10h. Je pense na UK nayebi te heure nini bozali biso awa tokoma 10h dans in 20 minutes, so tozala connected. We're gonna be live et puis nakoluka tu ba séance nyonso toleka misusu to record. That's it. My pote Gilencio napesi yo mbote bisika ozali. We miss you, man. I miss you too, man. So don't worry. Gilencio, don't worry. I'll be there. Il faut tout représenter Congo DRC na compte ya diplomatie et pour na mboka na biso na besoin na biso. Donc voilà.
Okay, close the book of yeah.
Hey guys, so we're not starting yet. Don't worry, but just please, if you can all make your way to the center and the front. I know you might need space, but if you can all just come together so that we can see just how many people
lovely.
are at the workshop, it would be great. Being dispersed is also fine, but if you're in the back, try to come to the front.
Thank
If
you,
you're on the side,
my
try
baby
to come to the
Claudice.
center.
Thank you.
If you can't, it's okay. Thank you. 15 minutes to go.
So this is your first conference? Are you excited? Cool. And you said you're from Italy, right? It's close, so. But it's pretty far away from Italy. Your first conference. Cool. You work, study. Have you been to Berlin? Well, you definitely have to go to Berlin. That's where I'm from. That you ride, like, where you're allowed to drive there.
One, check.
I bet it's really different for all you
Because I was staying in London, I just came to Germany for a holiday. So coming out from London, the roads are a lot better than just.
It's messy actually, so. But like, yeah.
You go on the highway.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like you sort of cruising at 120 guy at 180, just sort of really fast. And surprisingly, everyone, like even if you're driving so quickly, everyone just seems to be quiet. And cities, I like because I went to the Rhine Valley. And not there. Once I went to Italy as well. In France, it's silent. In France, it's silent.
Like, you have to.
So we're gonna get there. So we're gonna get there.
You know, you want to.
We're gonna get there.
Yeah, we on like not individual, but then we on the Facebook.
On the Facebook, yeah. I need more people. Yeah.
You get not all at once.
No. Oh, great shit.
And the Netherlands. And Denmark. But like the Nordic countries. Denmark. Yeah, Netherlands.
Okay, guys, everyone ready? 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
4. Yeah. We're actually ready to start right now, but are you guys sure this is where you want to sit? I keep bothering you about this, but really, can you see me?
It's so funny though, it's where you say the road.
Anybody wants to move to the front and center? This lovely place will be great. But it's hard.
And also like the castle. I want to see I went to Venice. I did Venice. Venice is beautiful. The only problem is I went there in the summer, so it was hot. Like it was 42 degrees Celsius. In America, that's like 100.
I think it's like 105.
So it was really hot. And also just the limestone, so it limestone flakes over there. But like it wasn't like a glass flake, there was no glass. It was really like a beautiful glass based on the shape of
But it's
off
hot
and
in
this
there.
storm.
I think there are 2 seats left over there, right? Oh, you want to put them back out? Yeah. Yeah.
This place of like the lake, blue, and the mountains, and like even in the summer you still see snow on top of the forest line. Like you have the mountains and the waters.
But I mean, that's really good. They have mountains. Sorry, I just have to advocate my country. Sleep back, right?
I mean compared to Malaysia,
Or France. France is like nicer beaches. Spain, Portugal, yeah. Italy. Oh my god, have you been there? Oh, it's so nice. So, where did you go? Like, the known like Bacano, Portugal? Yeah, Casablanca. I love the city of Porto. It's so pretty. I go there every summer.
You should visit one.
Yeah. question.
Sentiamo della scopertura di questo. Arrivo, eh?
Ce ne stanno due piccoline e una grande.
Grazie.
Poi ero il telefono.
È in diretta Facebook e per sbaglio ci sono anche nella solitaria. Aspetta, fallo girare un attimo, oggettivamente è abbastanza imbarazzante. Yeah.
So everyone they doing live, so you like to go live as well.
On Facebook?
On Facebook or any. Hello.
Hello.
So you give it international world. You know what you're doing.
Oddio, mi vedo le spalle. Ci vedi le spalle?
Facciamo un video.
Sì, vero? Hello.
Video? Saludate. Hello? Hello? Oh, I like this table because
It's really comfortable.
it's comfortable. It's tall, you know what I mean?
You can come
you do not have to lean over to write and stuff.
Say hello to
Where are you live?
Hello to the world.
UK.
UK.
Yeah.
And you said you studied international
International
globalization?
relations.
International
and global
relations.
political relations. International.
In which university?
University of London.
Ah, yeah. Which, it's not University College of London.
No, it's not University College. It's Central London. How do you know?
Because I was thinking about applying for there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
University College London. With
Yeah.
the purple,
Purple Rune.
purple thing.
That's
yeah.
what it is. That's what it is. That's the
I
one.
was thinking about applying there or to LSE.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright. See.
It's a one-year program, isn't it?
Okay.
No, yours.
Oh no, my one. Oh no, my one was 3 years.
3? Ah, so
Yeah.
you're,
Because the
you're
degree-
undergraduate?
Yeah, I was undergraduate and then I was doing my master.
So it's a 3 years master,
No, 3 years for undergraduate.
and then you do
And then the master.
a master of 1 year.
Yeah, 1 year. Yeah.
Okay.
In relation international.
You're still doing. You did both the undergraduate
Undergrad and master. Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Combined. Long day.
It was a big work.
I'm taking an espresso for this.
Yeah, but it's good though. It's really good.
So this might be useful.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do we need it? I don't think so we need
I
it.
have no idea. Actually, I don't want to take much with the computer. Like my eyes are already dead,
Okay.
so I might use the old-fashioned way.
So you want to not. Alright. So we're gonna use a what? No. You have to log in the computer. You know why? Because they said I think there is some material we're gonna use it. It's online.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
but see, it's going to stay.
Yeah.
It's not running away. Hopefully.
But they said that we have some material we're not with.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I cannot even begin to explain how excited I am to see you all here today. Welcome to the UN for MUN workshop by United Ambassadors and the UN Department of Public Information at the UN headquarters in New York, 5th edition. We are so happy to meet you all today, and we're very happy that you could make it. This workshop is welcoming about 150 students from, I think, over 60 countries, I believe, and we're so happy to see you here. This workshop will last for 2 days. Does everyone have their booklet? Perfect. So if you go through your booklet, You'll see quite a lot of information. We are supposed to cover as much as we can of all of that in the next 2 days. We can, but we will need your full undivided attention throughout each module. The workshop is 8 modules, and so we have 4 modules per day, 2 before the break today at 1 p.m., 2 after the break starting at 3 p.m. We're going to cover an introduction to the UN, overview of UN for MUN, the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council High-Level Political Forum, and the International Court of Justice, and conclude with some tips and advice for you if you would like to join future UN for MUN conferences or organize them. Without further ado, we'll start with introductions. So before we ask you all to introduce yourselves, I'd like to start by introducing my co-moderator for the workshop, Ms. Antje Waterman from the UN Department of Public Information.
Thank you, Nabila. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is awake, not too jet-lagged. Who is jet-lagged? Who's coming from different time zones? Okay, I see. All right, I'll keep a close eye on you. Also, if you feel tired, always feel free to walk to the back, walk a little bit up and down, because I know usually moving your legs helps a lot when you're tired. My name is Antje Waterman. This is my 3rd workshop now, I think, with Nabila. The 2nd one in New York. We did the first one last year in August, which was very exciting, and I'm very happy to see so many of you here this year as well. I work in the Department of Public Information in the Education Outreach section, where we work a lot with high school students on different programs, for example, the Holocaust Memorial Program, Remember Slavery, and also the upcoming International Day of Peace on the 21st of September. And I'm also part of the UN Academic Impact, which is taking care of universities and aligns them with the United Nations to work towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Before that, I was at the UN Development Program here in New York, working in a team that was preparing the negotiations for the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda. So we will have a bunch of examples that I'm going to use from these negotiations to talk about how things work in committees and the General Assembly. And a long time ago, I was an intern, both one time in Geneva for the UN Conference on Trade and Development, and also here in headquarters for the Department for General Assembly and Conference Management. So the UN has always been a fascinating place for me, and I'm very happy that you're all here today, and I'm sure I will see some of you in a couple of years somewhere in the UN system or in the sphere around it.
Thank you so much, Antje. So before we begin, I'll introduce myself. My name is Nabila El Assar. I am the founder of United Ambassadors and the academic director of UAMUNC and this workshop. I have a pretty long story with Model UN in general and with just different opportunities that I tried to join when I was your age that could help me develop. I started MUN when I was 10 years old. It's been a while. It's been a very long time. I haven't stopped since. So on my 16th year in Model UN today, I'm very happy to be offering this workshop in collaboration with the UN Department of Public Information. However, right after this conference and workshop, I have to take a 1-year break because I have to complete a master's degree in education at Stanford University and an executive certification in nonprofit leadership for United Ambassadors at Harvard University. Before United Ambassadors, I always believed that you can change your life if you want to, and you can, through whatever experiences you join as you grow up, change your direct surroundings, or at least have impact on your society and your surroundings and the world. United Ambassadors was founded under the slogan, I am an everyday ambassador. And our first conference at the UN headquarters had the slogan, can MUN change the world? These are very big slogans, right? And in the end, every day with our work, we continue to do this because we believe that one way or another, if we impact one student attending our workshops, that one student has so much information and knowledge that you can use in your future, regardless of where you choose to work, regardless of what you do. So Antje just mentioned that she might see you in the future within the UN system, but even if you're not a part of the UN system, the knowledge that you gain from this workshop and this conference will be very valuable for your future, whatever field or career you choose. Again, this workshop hopes to deliver an accurate understanding of how the UN functions. UN for MUN is a model UN platform that was developed by the UN years ago. It started to offer students opportunities to understand how the UN actually functions. UN for MUN has developed over the years in many ways. very recently, I took the initiative to meet with the Registry of the International Court of Justice and some people working at the ECOSOC High-Level Political Forum and offer new simulations in the UN for MUN industry for the ICJ and ECOSOC. So once again, we're very excited for this workshop. This was one of the best decisions you made in 2018. We're going to talk about the agenda again, expectations, what we hope you will learn at this workshop, and then ask you to introduce yourselves. So we don't have much time for this, but we have a lot of people in this room. We're going to start from left to right in order. I'll ask you to tell us your name, what school you're from, where you're from, and one fun fact if you'd like to add it or not, it's up to you. Name, school, country, you can mention age, up to you. We'll start from the left. I'm looking at you, Kai. Yeah, go for it. Just click on the microphone, the red button, and once it turns red, you can speak.
Is it fair, I like cars as a fun fact? I like red cars.
Red card.
I like Formula 1.
What?
I like Formula 1. That's a decent fun fact.
Hi, I'm Alejandra from Ecuador, and I study at Delta.
Hi, my name is Natalie Hoyes. I'm from Ecuador also, and I study at the same school, Delta. Yeah, and I've had 3 month experiences.
Hello, my name is Fabián Ortiz, and I'm also from Delta and from Ecuador. I'm 16 years old.
Hello, my name is Annalise. I'm from Ecuador, and I study in Delta.
Università.
My name is Mafer. I'm also from Ecuador, and I also study in Delta.
Tutto dall'Ecuador. Sì, in effetti l'Ecuador è
My name is Emilia Lopez. I'm also from Delta and Ecuador, and this is my first small event.
Hi, my name is Tia. I study in Delta, in Ecuador as well, and I love geography.
I also study at Delta. I'm from Ecuador, and this is my first year mark. Hi, I'm Vanessa Alonso, and I'm also from Delta and also from Ecuador, and I've had 2 new experiences.
Yeah, it's just if you have no
Hi, my name is Domenica. I am also from Ecuador, from Delta, and I like to draw. Hi, my name is Andrea. I'm also from Ecuador. I also study at Delta, and I am 16 years old.
Hi, my name is Michaela. I'm from Ecuador, and I also study at Delta.
Hello, my name is Luciana. I'm 16. I'm from Ecuador, and I'm also from the same school, girls. And I am excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Bianca. I am from Ecuador and Delta, and this is my first model experience.
Hi, I'm Domenica. This is my first model, and I'm excited and also nervous. I'm from Ecuador, and I study at Delta.
Hi, I am Maria Jose. I am also from Ecuador. I am 16 years old, and this is my first model event.
Hi, my name is Anqua. I'm 17 and I'm from Vietnam. Nice to meet all. Hi, my name is Cornelis Lengkong. You can call me Rico. I come from Indonesia, studied international law at Samratulangi University. Nice to meet you all.
Però non è quindi
Adam, I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I'm going to Searle Remote Collegiate.
Hi everyone.
Oh, yeah, right now.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniela. I'm half German, half Brazilian, and I'm an intern here at the DPI. I work with NPS.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rustam. I'm from Tajikistan. I work in UN, Department of Public Information, first, and UN as well. Hey.
All right. Well, I'm very happy to be here, and I also want to give a welcome to everyone. My name is Maria Luisa Ramirez. I'm from Colombia. I'm from the Universidad de los Andes. And well, I haven't heard fun facts. I guess my fun fact is I'm a twin sister. But she's not here today, so there'll be no confusions. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, my name is Dora. I'm from Los Andes University in Bogota, Colombia. This is my first time in a UN model. I'm really excited. One fun fact is that, well, Colombian people, they say they're really happy people, so waiting for meeting you all.
Hi, my name is Helen. I'm from Ecuador. I'm 15 years old, and this is my first model UN.
Hi, my name is Camila. I'm 15 years old and I'm from Ecuador.
Hi, I'm Paulina. I'm 15 years old. I'm from Ecuador, and fun fact, I love nature.
Hello, my name is Angie. I'm from Ecuador too. I'm coming with all the girls from Delta. I'm faculty advisor.
let's forget about it.
I'm from the U.S. and I go to Annapolis Middle School.
Hello, I'm Aike. I'm 16 years old, and I'm from Turkey. I'm at Development Foundation High School.
Hi everyone, I'm Anastasia. I am from Guyana. I did my degree in international relations with currently I'm doing journalism at John Day College. I'm living here currently. Oh, and fun fact, I love Indian food.
Hi everyone, my name is Hashim and I'm from Ghana. I study in Italy, University of Camerino, and this is my first model UN experience.
I'm Jitendra. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Jaffa in Malaysia. Fun fact, I'm a big Eminem fan.
Hi everyone. Is that working? Yeah. My name is Glenda. I'm from Berlin, Germany, where I'm going to be a senior next year. I've been to 3 MUN conferences, and fun fact, the last one was 2 weeks ago, also in the UN headquarters.
Hello everyone. Hello everyone, my name is Pedro. I'm 25 years old and I'm currently doing a master's program for global health at George Mason University. And fun fact about me is that I like studying French, the language.
My name is Monique Mayorga. I'm also from Ecuador. These are my students. Most of them are first-timers, and I'm very proud of them for being here. So be nice to them. And fun fact, I could eat pizza all day, every day.
Is it on? Yeah. So my name is Sophie. I'm 19 years old and I'm from Luxembourg, and I'm currently studying in Boston, in Belgium.
Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Don Su. I'm Chinese, but I grew up in Italy. I study law at the University of Bologna, but now I'm attending my exchange program at UC Berkeley. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Giovanni. I'm from Italy. I'm 21. I'm really excited to be here. and I study international relationships in Italy.
Hi, my name is Piercarlo, I'm Italian and I study political science in Rome. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Francesco, I'm from Roma, University of L'Aquila, and I'm very happy for this experience. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Vittoria, I'm Italian, I'm studying political science in Teramo. This is my first experience and I'm so happy about it. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Nicoletta Banini, I'm 23 years old, I'm from Italy, Rome, I'm studying international relationship in Rome. It's my first experience in the United Nations and I'm so excited.
Hello. Hello. My name is Igor. I'm from South Brazil and 22 years. Law student in Exuk University.
So my name is Alcindo. I'm also from Brazil. I'm 21. I study at the University of São Paulo, and I'm really proud and excited to the experience. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marcela. I'm 36 years old. I'm a psychologist and social entrepreneur. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Danilo and I'm from Italy and I'm graduated in law at the University of Rome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Daniela and I'm from Italy and I'm 23 years old and I study languages in Italy.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Roberta. I'm from Italy and I'm a languages and culture student and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Erika. I'm from Italy and I'm studying finance.
Hi. Hi, my name is Isabel. I'm from Italy, where I study languages, and this is my first non-experience.
Hi, I'm Sofia. I'm 20. I'm studying at the University in Northern Italy, International Relationships.
Sorry. Good morning. My name is Ludovica and I'm Italian. I'm 24 and I study international relations at the University of Moscow Venice. Fun fact, I'm really obsessed with Arabics. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Luana. I'm 21 years old. I'm from Italy and I study political science at the University of Trieste.
Hi everyone, I'm Silvia, I'm Italian too, and I study law at the University of Padua, and it's my first MUN experience, and I'm enjoying.
Good morning, colleague. My name is Taffy. I'm from DRC Congo, and I live in the United Kingdom. So I'm studying Global Political Relations International, and I'm delighted to be in this place. And I'm sure everyone, they will be happy and they're going to get some experience, how to know how United Nations, Security Council, Human Rights, all this work. Thank you, and I'm very glad to see everyone here and to meet you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Does it work? Okay. Hello everyone, I'm Francesco. I study International Economics in Milan, Italy, and this is my first MUN experience as well. Well, good luck to everyone, I suppose.
Hi, my name is Giuliano. I'm 24. I'm from Italy and study economics.
Hi, I'm Cecilia. I'm from Italy and I'm studying at Toulouse University, and this was my first time with Model UN organization. Thank you.
Hi. Hi. I'm Valentina and I'm 23 and I study law in Modena.
Hi, I'm Yunala and I'm 21 years old and I'm from Italy. Hello everyone, I'm Silvia, I'm from Turin and I study law.
Hello, my name is Marina. I'm from Ukraine, from Odessa, and I'm studying international relations and political science. It's my first model United Nations, but it's also the second model of the European Union. Yep. I previously participated in the Model European Union in Strasbourg. Thank you.
Hi. Sorry. Hello everyone, my name is Julia. I'm 17. I'm from Poland, but I study in London, and this is my first MBA.
Hi, my name is Francesca. I am from Italy. I study law and I'm 23 years old. And that's my first time there.
Hi to everyone, I'm Carla Federica. I'm from Italy and I'm studying economics and finance in Milan.
There's about 100 people from Italy, 30 people from
Hi,
Ecuador,
my name is
and then
Sabrina.
a
I'm
few
from
random
Italy
people from
and
the rest
I
of the
study law in Milan.
So that's how it's going to be.
Hi everyone,
Spanish
my name is
accent
Chiara
around.
and I'm from Italy too. I study international diplomacy science and this is my first UN experience. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone, my name is Anna Vita. I'm 20 years old. I'm Italian and I'm studying law in Milan. Thank you everyone.
Hi, I'm Futura. I'm 29 years old. I come from Italy. I have a communication graduation. My model UN organization is World Students Connections Italy. It's my first time here and I'm so excited. Thanks.
Hi everyone. Is it work? Okay. My name is Chiara and I study interpreting and translation in Italy. And this is my first time UN and I'm very happy to be here.
Good morning everyone, I'm Costantino, I come from Milan in Italy where I've studied economics and management. I'm very happy to be here and I wish everyone a beautiful experience.
Hi everyone, my name is Alessandro, I come from Italy and study international relations in Milan. Thank you. Good morning, I'm Andrea from Italy. I study economics in the University of Turin.
Hi, I'm Lise. And I study international relations in Milan.
Good morning everyone. I'm Donna and I study international law in Italy.
Hello everyone, my name is Lisa and I study international law in Milan as well.
Hi everyone. I'm Elisabetta and I'm from Savona in Italy, but I'm studying in Naples in Federico II University and I'm studying history. And I'm very happy to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa. I'm from Italy where I study public diplomacy at the University of Siena. And while being here, I hope I can proactively contribute to the UN works. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Giorgia Scala. I'm 22 years old and I graduated from the University for 4 years of Siena and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you all.
Hi. Hi everyone, I'm Veronica, I'm 20 and I study foreign languages in Perugia. I'm from Italy and this is my first UN experience and I hope it will be an amazing experience. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lucia, I come from Italy and I finished my master in international politics and economic relations and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sophia. I'm from Italy. I'm 18 years old, and this is my first time here. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm Mariangela. I come from Syracuse in Sicily, in Italy, and I've got graduation from Padua University. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Francesco, I'm from Florence and I study Korean languages at the University of Florence, Italy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gianmarco, 20 years old. I study law in Florence and I come from Italy.
I'm Alicia from Italy and I study economy in Padua.
Hi, I'm Lisa and I'm 20 years old. I'm from Italy and I'm studying at University Languages and Commerce. I'm very happy to be here and this is my first UN experience, so thank you.
Good morning, my name is Anna. I study political science in Milan.
Hi, my name is Federica Rippa. I come from Italy and this is my first model UN. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michela Pirotti. I'm from Italy and I study economics. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carolina. I'm from Italy. I'm 23 and I'm studying economics at the University of Nacora. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Sabrina from Italy. I'm a journalist. I study international cooperation and this is my first model UN here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Aurora. I'm from Italy where I study medicine and surgery and this is my first model UN experience.
I'm Antonio from Italy. I study physical sciences and things. And this is my first experience with UN and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Like there is one or two countries that...
Good morning everyone, my name is Giulia. I'm 22 years old. I come from Italy and I am an intercultural mediation student at the University of Macerata. This is my first model UN experience and it is a great pleasure for me to be here and I hope to give the best I can. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marianta. I'm from Italy. I study political science.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm 17 years old. I come from Italy and this is my first UN experience. Thank you.
Hi, I am Maria. I'm 17 years old and I come from Italy. I'm attending high school.
Hi, my name is Gaia. I'm 17 and I'm from Italy.
Hi, my name is Julia. I'm 20 years old and I'm studying journalism and communication at Film University Milan.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gaia and I came from Italy, and this is my first UN experience and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Eleonora. I study International Relations and Diplomatic Affairs and I'm really proud to be here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Faiza. I came from Turkey and my school in Turkey. This is my first model UN and I'm very excited. Thank you.
Good morning everyone, my name is Cosmin. I come from Romania. I'm 17 years old and I'm currently attending the National College of Informatics in Bucharest. This is my second time at the Model UN and I am very pleased to meet all of you. Thank you.
Good morning everyone, my name is Julia and I'm studying at Alexandru Vlahuț High School in Bucharest, Romania. Thank you.
It doesn't work. Okay, hello there. I'm Lorenzo from Italy. I'm 23 years old. I had a degree at the University of Bologna, and at the moment I'm studying mountain environment. I'm glad to be here, and I think that the Model UN is a very interesting experience. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, I'm Chiara and I'm 21 years old and I'm from Italy and I'm studying at Bologna University. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Caterina, I'm 25 years old and I studied in Bologna and this is my first UN experience. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Camilla. I'm from Italy too. I study language and culture at Parma University and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chantal and I'm from Italy. I'm so excited to do this experience and I study law at Florence University. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Ambra. I come from Albania but I live in Italy and I study law in Milan and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
From Uganda?
No, Albania.
Albania.
I think that's everyone. Thank you so much everyone for, oh, very sorry. Please go ahead. Just click the button.
Oh.
Oh. Yeah, hi, my name is Chu. I'm from Canada. I currently teach at a school in China. In fact, I have a graduate degree from a school in Texas in political science. Thanks.
Fantastic, thank you so much. All right, everyone, so once again, thank you very much for introducing yourselves. It helps us a lot as we deliver the workshop to know exactly what the age range of participants are. I see we have a lot of first-timers, so rest assured, the majority of this workshop is exercises. So expect to be doing a lot of work and that you're going to be doing most of the work throughout the next 2 days. All right, so before we start, I just want to talk about what to expect at the workshop, expectations. This slide is about United Ambassadors in general. So UA is an international education organization based in New York and California. We're planning on another branch as well in the United Arab Emirates. We hold international conferences at the UN headquarters in New York and the UN in Geneva annually. Dates next year are changing. This is our 5th UN for MUN workshop in about Geneva, Switzerland, London, UK, in collaboration with the UN, New York, USA, and plans for one in California also soon. So our delegates have come to date from over 110 countries. That's throughout our history. Our first conference welcomed delegates from exactly 100 countries at the UN HQ in New York here. And this year at UAMUNC New York, we are expecting about little under 450 participants from 95 countries from around the world. So our work is international. Our programs are international. The locations where we hold our programs are international, and I'm constantly in a state of jet lag, very much like you right now. So what to expect at this workshop?
This workshop is our 2-day training program for UN for MUN that is held in collaboration with the UN. It's intended for those who wish to join UN for MUN conferences in the future and succeed at them, and also for faculty advisors or people who would like to learn how to potentially organize an accurate simulation of the UN in the future. This workshop will be predominantly practical. So there will be, after each theoretical module or training, you'll have a practical workshop to apply everything that we talked about. What do you expect? To learn about the UN, to learn what the UN is, why the UN exists, how the UN functions. What you should not expect is that this workshop will be the way to qualify for an award at the next UN for MUN conference you join. In the end, the only way that you can practically learn how to participate in a UN for MUN conference as a delegate and succeed is by participating as a delegate in a UN for MUN conference and succeeding. So the only way that you will truly know how to apply the rules of procedure that we talk about today on our 4 main UN organs, the GA, the Security Council, ECOSOC, and ICJ, is by actually being a delegate at UA-MUNC, which begins in 2 days. This is very important. So this workshop is not a preparation for the conference. It's held separately, and it's for you to gain an understanding on UN for MUN broadly. So you'll know about everything that we do in UN for MUN, all committees, how the entire conference functions, how each committee works. But it's not going to zoom in on any of the committees that you're going to be a part of if you're also joining UA-MUNC in 2 days. And again, expect a lot of practical work. Our next break is at 11:45 a.m. and then the next one will be at 1 p.m. So we're going to start with an introduction to the United Nations, and I'm going to hand it over to Antje.
Thank you. Okay, great. So I saw a lot of you are first-timers. Some of you had a couple of Model UN experiences. So we are going to start with an introduction to lay the foundation for the next few days. And don't worry, a lot of the chapters that we're going to cover today, we're going to repeat over the course of the next 2 days. So of course, we're going to start with what is the United Nations. So when I put together this presentation, I also actually looked up, so when you Google United Nations, what do you find? So most of the time when you look it up, it says it's an international organization. But then also the question is, what is an international organization? And the definition that I found was you need at least 3 countries, which we do because we have 193 countries. Does any of you know what was the last country that joined? South Sudan, exactly.
Sudan,
so
yes.
now we have 193 countries that can meet in the General Assembly Hall, and I think there's space for a couple of more countries, but like because of the extension over time, the General Assembly Hall is quite crowded now with all the different member state seats. The next thing the international organization needs is activities in several countries, and if you look at our UN headquarters in New York, where you are, and then also at the other main offices, you have Geneva, Nairobi, Vienna, that's already a couple of countries. Can you give me some examples? Where else do you find UN offices or UN activities? In Chile, yeah.
In Rome.
In Rome, exactly. Good one, yes. Yeah. UN peacekeeping missions, exactly. So you see, okay, so this criteria we also fulfill. We have a lot of activities in several countries. And then the last one is the international organization needs a formal agreement. What is the formal agreement of the United Nations? The UN Charter, exactly. So we have 193 countries, we have activities in several countries, and we have the UN Charter. So that makes the United Nations an international organization. And I just mentioned earlier, when the UN was founded in 1945, like how many countries do you think started out at the United Nations? Because it was not 193. Yeah, 51 countries.
Yeah, 51.
So you see, like, over the course, it grew quite a bit from 51 countries. Okay. And then having so many countries, so many members, that's always tricky. I mean, you know how it is to find agreement just within your family or among your friends. So one of the guiding principles of the United Nations is actually the sovereign equality. And can you give me some examples of like what that might mean? That's a very good example. Did everyone hear the example?
No.
No.
So we have the example of the Rohingya refugee crisis in Myanmar. So basically what it means is that every country is sovereign. They will govern within their own national borders. And no other state can intervene in domestic issues, and also the UN cannot either. So I think this is one thing also to keep in mind going forward when you are a delegate further down the line in the simulations. The UN can just give recommendations, but even if you take any of our country offices that we have, the peacekeeping missions as well, we need the invitation of the host country. Like the United Nations is always a guest in the country. Like if you take Rome, the Italian government is kindly hosting the United Nations, but the UN cannot just come to any country, set up an office there, and just claim that space. So it's always a voluntary approach. So the sovereign equality is a very important principle, and also especially when you look at the General Assembly, it also reflected in the case that in the General Assembly, every country has one vote. So it doesn't matter how small, how big you are, how many people live in your country, what is your economic power, what is your military power, like each country is treated the same. Then another important thing, and you've just noticed it as well when we went around, is multilingualism. Can you tell me what are the 6 official languages of the UN? English,
French, Spanish,
Arabic,
Chinese,
Russian, and Chinese, exactly. And then we also have 2 working languages. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, English and
French and English.
French and English,
exactly.
yeah.
So you see, this is already quite a lot of languages that are being spoken, and also today, if you look at us, I think almost 95% are probably doing this workshop in our 2nd or 3rd language. I usually speak German, you speak? I speak Arabic and English, yeah. So this is also one of the tricky things at the United Nations. If you take an organization like the headquarters with over 2,000 people, everyone having to speak in their non-native language, you need to be very mindful of like how you communicate and avoid misunderstandings. In addition to these 6 languages, the Department of Public Information where I work, we also have 2 radio channels in Kiswahili and Portuguese. And also if you look at our current Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, he also speaks a lot of languages. So he can give a speech at any given time, obviously also in Portuguese because he's from Portugal, but he also speaks English, Spanish, and French as well. So this is also a very good feature to have. The more languages you speak, especially the official languages, the more you can, address people, address member states, and address the general public with these different languages. Okay, so now we're talking about the UN's purpose. So in general, the UN came alive after the war, and it's basically a place where people can meet. So you have the conference room here, where you're all sitting right now. Are you gonna do a tour? Yeah. There's a UN, perfect. So then you can also see the different chambers that we're gonna talk about later. But first and foremost, the UN is a place where people can meet, where they can discuss anything from like long-term issues, if you look at sustainable development, but also pressing issues, for example, in the Security Council. And the way the UN was set up was also in a way that it can develop over time, because when you take 1945, was a very different world than we have today. And the way that the UN is set up, it can actually evolve and add new mandates as well. So for example, we have UN Women that was founded in 2010 that is now dealing with the issue of gender equality. And for example, last year we also added a new office for counterterrorism. So you see also over time there are new topics being added that are coming up on the general agenda. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the different UN pillars. And this is already going into the different mandates that the UN has. To start with, of course, to maintain international peace. So can you give me some examples how the UN does it? What like committees do we have? What organs do we have? Like what kind of work do we do to maintain peace? And if you can just like raise your hand and then. Okay.
Yeah.
And can you try to use the microphone? If you press the red button. Yeah, there we go.
So the Security Council will be in charge of maintaining the peace and security. As well, for example, ECOSOC will be the Economic Social Committee in charge of promote the sustainable environment. We have the International Court of Justice that will be in charge of upholding the international law. And I'm missing, someone help me. Will be the social and humanitarian in charge of human rights and humanitarian aid.
Exactly. So we have a lot of different organs. We're going to look at that on the next slide as well that take care of different aspects of peace. But yeah, the most important one, definitely the Security Council. And I think there it's also important to keep in mind that if a conflict comes up, it's not like the Security Council will dispatch a peacekeeping missions right away. So they will try to find diplomatic solutions first. They might invite the parties, that are involved in the conflict to go talk to each other. And for this, there's also another interesting way, so-called special envoys. So the Secretary General can actually appoint people, like especially people, that are perceived as neutral, that, that both parties have a lot of trust in. So you can have a special envoy on a topic, let's say a special envoy on health, or a special envoy on a country, on Syria, and this person basically acts as a mediator between the different parties. So that is also a great way of avoiding even that a conflict or a war basically appears at the end. Then also the General Assembly we just mentioned. Again, this is important because you want a space where people talk. Because as long as I know what your position is, what your plans are, what you want to do in the future, I have less fear because I know what you're doing, I'm transparent about what I'm doing. So as long as people talk, there's less room for speculation, for secrecy, for people, like dealing with uncertainty. So the General Assembly in itself also supports the peace endeavors of the United Nations. Then of course, if there has been a conflict or if the situation is already escalating, then the UN and the Security Council can dispatch the peacekeeping missions. We currently have 15 missions worldwide, where also I think most of the UN staff is actually participating in. Then again, the new Department for Counterterrorism, this is also another way of the UN addressing new issues and new threats coming up in the world. And then one that unfortunately also is a very hot topic again is disarmament. So this has been a topic going on basically since the war to kind of like make sure that member states reduce the number of weapons, missiles, nuclear weapons. So that's definitely a challenge ongoing because even just having these different weapons available makes the world unsafe. So this is everything that covers peace. So the next one we already addressed a little bit is protect human rights. And I think we have somebody here who was also very particular interested in human rights. Do you know what does the UN do for human rights?
What UN do for human rights is to protect, especially where there's a war, where there's a conflict between the state, and sometimes we find out it came to people that had to leave the country to go somewhere else. The human rights also is one of the problems, especially when there's no respect of the policy from the government. There's no respect in the engagement or between government and population. So if there's no respect of the state policy and international policy, then if there's a lot of abuse into the population, so that's where UN had to take a step to send, for example, we go what's called an organization like Red Cross or like also UNICEF. All this is just to protect human rights.
And again, that's a great example because one of the things you will see when you look at the different pillars, like it's really rare that you can treat one pillar at a time. So for example, again, if we take like any kind of crisis, a conflict, so it's not only about making sure that the human rights are respected, and the main document that the UN and the world uses is the Universal Declaration for Human Rights. And also it's celebrating its 70th anniversary this year. So towards the end of December, there will be a lot going on around the topic of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But you also see like in this situation, so that's one thing. So ideally, each government ensures that their citizens are safe, that their human rights are protected, that everyone is equal, that everyone is treated the same, that everyone has access to education, to clean water and sanitation, basically that everyone can fulfill their potential. But at the same time also it means that often there's a humanitarian action taking place, which is the next point. If there's a crisis, you have organizations, as you just mentioned, for example, UNICEF, the World Food Program, who then come in and help people in these urgent matters just to make sure that people have access to water, to food, to shelter, and basically also ensure that the human rights are being met and are being protected. When you look at the different offices, there's the office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and actually we just got a new president that was appointed by the Secretary General. Her name is Michelle, probably cannot say it right, Bachelet from Chile, and so she's the next UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and she will start on the 1st of September. And so their job is basically also to keep an eye out to see what member states are doing. They can send, again, also special envoys to these countries to look at how certain groups within a country are treated, if the human rights situation is being threatened, and they're reporting back. And also I can really recommend to sign up for the newsletter. So they will send you alerts which countries are being investigated for which topic, and it's really interesting to follow different issues. In addition to that, there's also the Human Rights Council that is based in Geneva and has 47 member states. And this is actually very interesting, so pretty much anyone who feels like their human rights are not being met, that their human rights are being violated, they can contact the Human Rights Council and they will look at the issue. And then last but not least, also of course the Security Council can also again dispatch missions and special envoys to countries to look at the human rights situation as well. So humanitarian aid we just talked about. This is basically the emergency response of the United Nations. So really if there's a crisis within pretty much 24 hours, the UN, especially if you look at UNICEF, World Food Program, they have staff that is on call. So if there's a, for example, like a hurricane happening or a tsunami, they can dispatch people within a couple of hours. They basically go on the ground, they evaluate the situation, they report back to headquarters, and basically just send a list of everything that is needed. So they say, okay, so we have that many people affected in this area, we need shelter, we need tents, we need food, we need medication, and then basically over the course of literally just a couple of days, they are sending all the material over. So it's a huge logistical operation. They're the ones who have the airplanes, the helicopters. If you work in that department, it's actually very interesting. You also have to deal with how to buy petrol to fuel all these like planes and helicopters. So it's a very practical operational system that is in place. And the last one, promote sustainable development. So of course there we're going to talk about the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Yeah, it's a question?
I just want to go back to the previous point about human rights. How often does the body like the UN go in unilaterally as opposed to being invited? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but does that happen often?
Can you
use
press
your
the thing?
microphone? Then you need to press the red button, please.
Yeah, you can speak now. Is it ready? Yeah.
So to go back to the previous point about human rights, I understand you do have to balance the rights of the states and sovereign states versus these universal themes like human rights. So how often does the UN go in unilaterally versus being invited by the state? Does that have to happen often?
So again, they would need to have the permission. The UN cannot go in there unless the country allows it, and that does happen. So sometimes if the UN says we would like to send a special envoy on that particular topic, the countries say like, no, we don't want that. Again, yeah, that's a sovereign equality. Yeah.
Okay, so in regards to what he was speaking of, if a member state is constantly, I would say, violating human rights when it comes to, for example, chemical weapons being used against civilians, how often or what's the deadline that the United Nations has to take actions for those civilians not to be treated as, to be violated?
That's already, we will look at that when we talk about the Security Council. So that's already a very tricky question, because basically what would happen is that a country that is part of the Security Council or also the General Assembly can make a recommendation to discuss this particular topic in the Security Council. And we'll speak about that later, how that works. But basically, the Security Council would need to vote on that resolution if and then how they would want to take action. And we'll look at that later today or tomorrow, why that often is a very difficult matter, if that's okay. Yeah? Okay. We'll come back to that. Sustainable development. Oh, sorry, one more.
And I wanted to know if, like, any member states can, like, overrule I mean, maybe the plan of the UN maybe to react at this particular time, and then maybe decide to say, okay, because this situation is serious, can I have the capacity to react? Can I choose to react even before the UN reacts? Can any state, like, take upon itself to do that, like, to help the civilians in case, like, in a situation where the situation is very serious?
You mean the own government or a neighboring country, for example?
A neighboring country, for instance, can help.
That's also it. Also, good point. Yes, in theory, yeah, because every country is sovereign. So if you decide you want to help a different country or dispatch help for a particular country, you can do that. But then, of course, that might have implication with that country where you would want to send the aid to, depending if the government would want it or not. I mean, because often what happens if there's an emergency. I think one example in Europe recently was Sweden. Sweden had a lot of like wildfires and had problems beating them. So Sweden said, okay, we have a problem, like we cannot figure this problem out ourselves, like can we get aid from other countries? And then other countries basically send their firefighters or logistical support to that country. So of course it's always easier if a government asks for help. I'm not sure what happens if a country doesn't ask for help and you send aid. I don't know what the implication of that would be. Then it gets a little bit more tricky. Like ideally, the UN, again, the UN being an organization for member states, and each member state has a government who's running that state, so ideally everything is always agreed with the different governments. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Okay, I just want to ask, UN just only have a declaration instrument to go on all regarding to the human rights, but is there any standard when the UN have to intervene a country? I mean, have to intervene doing something to compare with human rights. For this only declaration is not such a kind of must that type every countries, but is there any standard when UN have to intervene country?
Okay, yeah, so the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is basically a guideline. Like ideally, each country would follow the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Every person would live a good life in theory if that was the case. Again, so if there's a situation where human rights are being disregarded and the UN, either the General Assembly, the Secretary General, or one of the countries in the Security Council, then again, they can call a meeting. Again, we'll also talk about the Security Council later, but the Security Council can be called at any time, day or night. If there's a crisis, like within, I think, 2 hours, people have to be here in the Security Council and they will discuss the matter. But again, at the end of the day, the UN can call for this meeting, but it will be the member states of the Security Council who will make a decision if and how they want to intervene. So I think this is also one of the things that we deal with a lot. Often if you hear criticism about the UN is not doing X, Y, Z. At the end of the day, it's the member states. So we are the forum, either in the General Assembly or the Security Council, but without the governments, the member states, the UN itself cannot intervene or take any action.
Hello? Okay. What happens if a member state goes against what the, for example, General Assembly stated, like no to get involved or not send any emergency aid or anything, and they still do it? Is there like, I know they get sanctioned at some points, the states. Is there like any guideline on which sanctions do they get? Like, it's usually there are economical sanctions sometimes for the member states, but is there like a charter or something that you follow into how to sanction each state into which action they commit?
Okay, yeah, we can pick this up later with the Security Council. Can you keep that in mind? Because also we'll talk about the difference between a General Assembly resolution and a Security Council resolution as well, but then we can come back to that. Okay.
What happens in a situation where a particular state like chooses to disregard like the norms or the rules of the United Nations, like in the case of Syria, like the government have like disregarded the rules or the norms of the UN for like a certain particular time. What happens to that particular state, like as in terms of sanctions and in terms of like maybe obligation of the UN to the citizens, like what happens in general?
Okay. Can you also keep that question for a Security Council session, because then we can talk about it in more detail, and we'll also do a mini simulation on that particular topic. Because these are, I mean, as you can already tell by my answers, these are the really difficult questions to answer, but we will look at the different solutions and the way it has been handled in the past.
Okay.
Okay. Just to finish up with this, international law. Here as well, we're going to talk about the International Court of Justice, where Nabila got the inside scoop by going there and finding out more about it. And from here, I just want to briefly transition to the UN main organs. I mean, we already touched upon all of them, and I think also here we can already start talking a bit more about it. So with the General Assembly, 193 member states, each one has the same vote, so each one is being treated equally. But with the caveat that all General Assembly resolutions, they are not legally binding. So this is also why we will look later at the importance of consensus in our next chapter, but also keep that in mind. So whatever the General Assembly decides, countries do not, like basically if they don't implement it, what we just said before, if I as a country do not implement it, there is no legal action that can be taken, or there's basically no way of punishing me if I don't do what the General Assembly decided, and that's very important to keep in mind. The Security Council we will also look at in more detail. There we have a completely different setup. So we have 5 permanent members, and you probably all know what they are. UK, US,
In the UK.
UK, US, Russia, China, and France. Exactly. So these members are always there. And then we have the 10 non-permanent members. And so we're also going to look at that a little bit more later. The International Court of Justice, unfortunately, it's not here in New York, it's in the Netherlands. So we can't really visit it or look at it. But we're going to look at that later. And here the big difference is this is a court for member states. So you cannot go there. Like if you had a complaint about anything, they're not going to take it. You need to be a government. A government can say, for example, we have a different opinion on where the border should be, or for example, if you're a landlocked country and you think you should have access to an ocean, to a sea, but you cannot find an agreement with your neighboring country that is by the sea, you're being blocked from access to the sea, this is where you can go to figure out a solution, and also again to avoid escalation and to avoid any kind of conflict. Economic and Social Council, we mentioned earlier as well. They are very, very busy now with the Sustainable Development Goals. They're having annual meetings now, the High-Level Political Forum. Who has heard of the High-Level Political Forum before? A couple of you. So we're also going to look at that later tomorrow. This is actually an event that just took place here in July. And it is member states who come here and they present what they have been working on to fulfill the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's actually a very interesting week. A lot of ministers come, countries present their work. Very interesting. We'll look at that definitely tomorrow. Trusteeship Council, you can still visit the chamber on your tour, but the Trusteeship Council actually completed their work in 1994, and that was basically the committee that dealt with the decolonization. So they have completed their work. And then last but not least, the Secretariat. This is where I work, for example. This is basically the whole building above us with people who support member states and all their meetings. So it could be the Department of Public Information. We also get our guidance from the member states. They ask us, oh, can you please, the Department for Political Affairs. These people monitor the situation of all countries. They always make sure that the Secretary General, if he goes to a meeting, has the latest information, what is happening, who is governing, what are the issues. Then we have safety and security, the people who screened all of you this morning, the officers who are outside the meeting rooms to make sure everyone is safe. Then you have conference management, all these people who who run the conference room, make sure we have audio, we have light, we have the nameplates. So as you can imagine, it's just like it's a whole machinery of people making sure that if member states come, have a meeting, have a negotiation, that everything is taken care of. Anything from webcast, making sure that there are press releases written about the meetings. And this might also be interesting for you, all public meetings being taken place here, also in the other headquarters, are actually publicly available. So you can watch them online if you wanted to. If you want to see what somebody said during a meeting, you can do that, and everything is being archived. Okay, so then we're going to move to this important person here. So the one on the left is our current Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. As I just said, so he's the one who speaks English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese fluently in any interview, if you ask him to. And he has, as the first ever Secretary General, called it the most impossible job. Because he is supposed to lead the United Nations. Again, what we just said, we have the UN Charter, we are very clear on where we stand in terms of human rights, on any kind of issue. And then you have 193 member states who might agree or disagree with you. And you have to be the person that on the one hand is protecting the organization and its values, but at the same time make sure that everyone wants to work with you. So it's a really tough job. As you know, like he's traveling around the world, he's meeting different governments, he's also meeting with civil society, with students, with young people, trying to like bring everyone into the process, but at the same time while respecting that it is a member state driven organization. So it's a very tough political job that he is doing. And one thing I wanted to point out is, did any one of you watch the election process of the current Secretary General? So I know for you it might not sound very exciting, but we were very excited. Because it used to be, in the past, that basically the Security Council met, they were like talking, nobody knew what was happening, and poof, we had a Secretary General. And there he was, and nobody knew why and how come that it was that particular person. So, because nowadays, especially also with social media, with everything being so much more transparent, there was actually a whole election process. So the photo that you see here was a debate that the candidates had that was led by two journalists. It was shown on Al Jazeera TV, and basically they had to explain why do they think are they the best candidate? What are they going to do to reform the United Nations? What do they think are the most pressing issues? So this was really the first time that you had transparency over all the candidates that were in the race, and then over time, you know, the Security Council gave some indication which candidates they would prefer, and then over time we ended up with one candidate. But it was the very first time that actually there was transparency and people actually knew who was running for that particular job. So for us, that was a really big step, and it also shows you how pressure by civil society, by youth, by people from outside the organization also helps to make the UN and also like the political posts like the Secretary General more accountable and more transparent. Then also talking about the real UN, I mentioned it earlier, it's, yeah.
Who can be a candidate for the
So usually how it works, it's different governments make suggestions. So it's often, for example, Guterres was the former Prime Minister of Portugal. So it's really rare that it's somebody from inside the organization. So Kofi Annan was somebody from inside the UN, but often Ban Ki-moon, I think, was a foreign minister or an ambassador. So most of the time it's somebody who held a political position with a particular country and it's being recommended. And there's also regional rotation. So every time there's a new election, they move from, like, for example, they have Asia, they have Africa, then they have Western Europe. So that is also something to keep in mind, to basically have a regional balance, but the people themselves are usually people being recommended by governments, and ideally also you want to recommend somebody that has wide acceptance. You don't want to take somebody who is very controversial, because you know the Security Council will need to accept him at the end as well. So most of the time it's former diplomats or people who worked for governments. What we just said earlier, so it's not only the Secretariat, even though we look at the UN organs during the simulation, but there are a lot more other organizations out there as well. So the programs, agencies, and funds, as you can see here, like the UN Development Program, UNICEF, and so when you go to a particular country office, anywhere in the world, you will see all these people usually sit together in one office or they're really close by and they work together because at the end of the day, if you look at the issues in a country, it's not enough that you have the development program, you also want UNICEF to be involved, you might need help from the World Food Program, so they make sure that they coordinate, especially on the ground, and work together. Yeah, and I think with that, we can just jump to the Sustainable Development Goals. Yeah.
I guess I should have asked this question earlier, but for the United Nations and state members, is it the United Nations who approaches a member and says, would you like to join the United Nations, or is it a state member that approaches the UN, and what are the requirements for that?
I can look up the requirements. I know it will be the potential member state, so it will be a country that is not a member state yet that can approach the United Nations, and then the Security Council will decide on it. So I can look at that and see if we have an example then for this afternoon. Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
So, about the Secretary General, each member state has to vote in which candidate it thinks it's more appropriate, or how it is chosen?
Yeah, that is a good question. That is not, I don't know, as far as I know, that's not that transparent yet. But usually, again, so it will be a specific region. So everyone knows, okay, so this time around, it needs to be somebody from an Asian country. And then I think there's a lot of like informal negotiations, I assume, between member states that you don't necessarily know about. But then probably a group of countries will decide, okay, so what do we think about this candidate? And then, they kind of like take the temperature, they kind of like figure out, okay, would he be acceptable to the majority of countries? And then, of course, that person also need to want to do the job as well. So I think that's also the other question, like, would you want to do this particular difficult job? And it's a huge challenge. You spend all your time traveling. I don't think they ever sleep. So I think, to be honest, like, I wonder, like, how many candidates would you even be able to come up with who are qualified, who have the right nationality in that case, who have the experience. So what I assume is that member states come together and formally try to figure out and then make suggestions. I think for this race we had maybe like 8 to 10 candidates that we started out with. Yeah.
I want to find out how long that vote is go. Is every 5 years, or is how long the General Secretary to the vote take place?
Let me see. I think it's 5 years.
Is it 5 years, huh?
Yeah, so it's 5 years, and usually they can do up to 2 terms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Concerning the trusteeship council, you said their work was over because the decolonization of most of the states was like finished. But in this time and in the modern world now, we have also neo-colonialism. But you just said the work of the trusteeship council was over, but in actual sense, there's still colonialism. So I don't know why the work of the council will be over when the problem still is there, but in another form.
Yeah. So I think in that sense with the trusteeship council, I assume this is the work that was outlined at the beginning, basically that they outlined after World War II. So that is what they completed. But I'm sure what you talk about now, the colonization, that will be taken up by other bodies and other functions. But I think the work outlined, I can also, let me look this up for later, but I think basically they had an outline of these are the countries that we want to give back to their proper governments, and basically that has been completed. That doesn't mean that the topic is over. It's the same when we talk about transatlantic slave trade. So even though this historic slave trade doesn't exist anymore, it doesn't mean that there doesn't exist modern slavery. So even though one topic might be closed, there are other forms that exist today, but then often they're absorbed by other organizations or by other departments.
Okay, so the Secretary General has a really difficult job as you've outlined, but would you say that each Secretary General can uniquely impact the UN? Like, what extent do they uniquely impact the way the UN works or how things change in the UN? Or is it just a job that's sort of fixed from one to the next? Thank you.
So when you look at it, especially with the current Secretary General, so what he did actually just within, he's in the job now for like a little bit more than a year and a half. So he, for example, ensured that we have gender parity for all the senior personnel in the UN Secretariat, which means that there are equally amount of men, male and female, now in the senior positions at the United Nations. So each one of them obviously also addresses the issues of their time. As you know, there was also a huge debate about peacekeeping and the sexual harassment that was taking place there. So each one has particular topics that he's taking up during his term as well. And he can, he can also set the agenda, of course, as well. Like, he can also say, like, okay, this particular topic is particularly important to me, depending also what their background is, what they have experienced in the past. So I think also, like, a big focus now is on youth. I think that's also important because, obviously also he could, like, ignore certain topics if he wanted to. If this is helpful in the long run, that's another question. But of course, he also has the power to set the agenda as well. So each one basically also decides a little bit what they want to focus on, because again, like, if you look at everything that the UN is doing, you need to also focus, what would you want the things to be your legacy. So for Ban Ki-moon, because his last year coincided with the adoption of the 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, so this was basically his legacy. So that was the last year, he wanted to make it happen. He wanted to encourage member states to be on the Sustainable Development Goals. So yeah, so each one has a different way to approach things. Yeah.
I am curious that can the people in the secretary interfere or give their opinion during the conference? For example, during GA, during ECOSOC, can they give their opinion?
So you mean people who work for the United Nations?
Yeah.
No, so this is one of the requirements as well. If you were an international civil servant, for example, like I am, because I'm expected to work with all governments together. So it should not be in my interest, if this party or this party is in the government, I'm expected to work with member states, and therefore also they need to be able to trust me. So if they know I'm biased, that I, prefer one party over the other, how are they going to work with me? So this is why it's very important, I take the UN principles, I take, the UN ideals that I can stand for. So for example, I'm combating climate change as a civil servant working for the United Nations. So of course, in that regard, I can disagree with somebody who says we do not want to do anything in terms of climate change. But otherwise, you're supposed to be neutral, so that way you are trusted by everyone and you can work with everyone. Yeah. So, of course, also, for example, when you take the Sustainable Development Goals, there were a lot of expert briefings. So thematic experts on any kind of topic, deforestation, life on land, clean water, who work for example, for the UN Environmental Program, they would come to these negotiations and brief the delegates from the different countries on that particular topic. So of course, a person can have thematic expertise, country expertise, and share that, but it would always be in a neutral manner. Because at the end of the day, again, the decisions on how to go forward, how to negotiate, how to draft a resolution, which you will do later, that is up to the delegates. Basically, the UN can give thematic input, they can present the facts, their findings, their investigations, but again, the decisions are left up to the delegates to make a decision at the end.
Oh.
So apart from the Secretary General, each organ has a president, each committee. So apart from the Security Council, which is rotative, the presidency, how are the others chosen? Because in, I think, ECOSOC is Ecuadorian, right? The Maria Fernanda Espinosa. I don't know if no. But the Ecuadorian one, which one? General Assembly. Oh, sorry. Okay, so
how are they chosen? Are they like voted or like how?
Yeah, so we're going to look at that as well later for the General Assembly, but yeah, again, it's a political appointment, so it also, again, it works by different regions to make sure that people from different regions are being represented over time. And then also the other important thing is it's never a member from the permanent members of the Security Council, again, to make sure that there's a balance across all the different organs. But yeah, again, it's basically member states kind of like have informal negotiations, because also in these cases as well, being the president of the General Assembly, even though you don't have a lot of formal power, but you also need to be the one who works together with all member states. So I think overall it's a decision, let me check, I don't think there's like an official vote or anything, but basically member states need to informally agree on that particular candidate who will be able to do this diplomatic job. But also, I'll look that up again for our session later. Yeah, sorry, let me just go back here first.
Okay, so you said that the trusteeship council completed its job, but as time changes and the world evolves and new problems arise, could the trusteeship council have to reopen, and if potentially global peace would be achieved, would the United Nations complete its job and cease to exist?
Yeah, that's a good question. Especially when I was working at the UN Development Program as well, it was kind of like, well, if every country is developed, if all problems are solved, great, then we can all retire. As I say, there will always be new problems, especially when we look at the Sustainable Development Goals. What's so special about them is, so we have 17 goals, but they do not only apply for developing countries, they apply for every country. And that shows you that even if you're a developed country, I mean, often we look at the Nordics, like Sweden, Denmark, they're very well advanced with technology, they're supposed to be very clean countries, good access to education, but they still have things that they can do better, you know, like we can look at plastic pollution. This is also still a huge topic across Europe, so I think even if we solve a lot of for us fundamental issues that we have today, there will always be new ones. Or if you look at Ebola, that all of a sudden we had a huge crisis in this regard, and the World Health Organization had to step up and figure out how to address it. So I think even whenever you reach a new level of development, there will always be more than maybe you say, okay, we do not only want primary education for everyone, but maybe we want everyone, you know, to be able to go to university. So I think also over time you will always raise your standards, so there will always be, hopefully, work to do for us. Okay, how are we doing on time? Okay, then we do one more question.
I'm sorry. I wanted to know the position of the UN concerning the climate change. I know it's not related to it, but I just wanted to know the position of the United Nations on climate change, and then the projects they are undertaking currently to solve the problem. Because I mean, if you've seen other things around the world, you know it's a serious thing. So I wanted to know the position of the UN concerning this problem.
Yeah. So climate change is part of the Sustainable Development Agenda. So if you look at Goal 13, climate change, there you will see also the negotiated targets and indicators. So I mean, these are just really overall goals, right? If you look at quality education, what does that mean? So for climate change as well, if you look on the particular site, you see the specific targets that have been set out, and then also how member states going forward and the UN want to measure it. So there you have the specific goals for this. And then you also have the Paris climate agreement as well. So I think where they decided to, what was it? I'm not an expert on climate change. Basically reduce the temperature increase only up to what, 1.5 Celsius? I mean, basically there has been understanding for member states that climate change it's a reality, and basically we have to fight it. So that's the official position of the United Nations. But let me look it up again, what was the overall headline of the climate and Paris agreement and that. Yeah. Okay. Great, so I think before we head to the break, we'll just watch a quick overview of the Sustainable Development Goals, and you can get some water, and then we'll move to the next section.
have no plans for the moment. We might go at hamburger and lobster, but I don't know.
The United Nations is an organization that goes for peace and sustainable development around the world. Their mission is huge, but we're breaking it down in 2 minutes. 17 sustainable development goals. Let's get to them, cause the more you know. Look, in some corners of the world today, people are living on $1 a day. Hey, that's not how it ought to be. So go 1, eliminate poverty, and go 2, root out hunger across the globe. There's 800 million people hungry if you want to know. Number 3 is health and well-being, and giving people the health care that they need in. Learning in school are the hard to go for. Education opens up minds and doors. Goal number 5 is empower girls and women so they can have the same rights that men are given. Number 6, people need water that's clean. Poor sanitation can spread disease. Carbon-free energy is goal number 7. And how to achieve it is a question that's pressing. But if we put our minds together and work hard, we can find a solution, I'm guessing. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to light it. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to light it. Now imagine that you work all day for no pay. Economic growth, the decent workers go 8. Goal number 9 is to foster innovation and infrastructure and industrialization. Goal number 10, inequality reduction. 11 is sustainable city construction. 12, well, that's sustainable consumption. So what we use matches up with production. Goal 13 calls for urgent action to combat climate change, cause we know it's happening. 14, protect life under seas. 15, protect life on land. Goal 16 is for peace and justice. All over the planet, they're in high demand. And the final goal, number 17, is the critical factor, the heart of the machine. It's to strengthen the way we achieve these goals of sustainable development around the globe. Yo, 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to light it. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to light it.
Alright, and without further ado, we can now head to the break for 15 minutes. Please be back at 11:45 a.m. That way we have an hour and 15 minutes to go through a very important workshop and to cover how UN for MUN works, or how the UN works in model.
Hallelujah. We leave everything
Okay,
here.
let's trust fellow delegates for now.
Yeah, we trust them for now.
For now.
For now, for time
Then
being.
the commission is going to be a different thing.
Yes.
Let's see, in theory they should have at least one dish representing each of the 193 countries.
Sure. So we have to go now and we'll come back.
Looking for them to try, I don't know, maybe Spanish if they have something. Let me think.
I really need to.
You really need to? There's only one way. Practice, he's from London.
Yeah, we
Stay with him.
Always.
Always.
All the time.
Mi sembra il professore di bilancio che ci ha fatto la stessa roba per spiegarci bilancio, o anche quello di statistica. Main media nel mondo. Okay, let's go and meet people, guys. I think that's going to be more fun. I need some.